Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid, but today is the 1st of November 2024. The 11th month of the year has begun, but brings with it lots of stories to discuss during the course of the show. Without further ado, this is the lineup for today. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the US elections. 4 days are left. The elections are going to happen on the 5th of this very month. A lot of tensions, a lot of anger, a lot of sentiments flaring up in different constituencies where both the primary candidates, Donald Trump and Kamalaharris, are of course putting forward their points of views as to how they will govern the country once and if they come into power. We'll be discussing different aspects of it, from the different polls, what they are saying, from the different constituencies, and how victorious or not these two candidates have appeared, and what is the philosophy behind what these two candidates are coming forward with. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns a very heinous incident that has happened in Mastung. Terrorism in Pakistan has taken a very ugly turn in these last few weeks. In Mastung also, the saddest incident was that it happened near an educational institution and reminded us of what happened in the APC in December of 2014. The statements have been very strong. The statements have been very aggressive as far as how to deal with incidents such as these. For the moment, there is no terrorist organization that has come forward with being behind such incident, but we see certain elements that are always behind these heinous incidents that have been happening either in Balochistan or in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. We'll be highlighting different aspects of that in our second segment. Then we're going to talk about the Independence Day of Balochistan that is also being celebrated across Pakistan today. Of course, there are different ceremonies that have been held all across Balochistan and all across Pakistan as well. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about the 1984 Sikhs massacre that happened in India. November the 1st, 1984 is when Sikhs were massacred in India after the assassination of Indira Gandhi on the 31st of October 1984. Extremist Hindus selectively killed Sikhs through voting lists, and this sad day reminds the Sikh community across the world of what happened on this very day in 1984. Let's begin with our lineup for today, and we'll begin, of course, with the US elections with only 4 days left to it. We've been joined by two guests, one online and one in the studios. In the studios, we've been joined by Jauhar Saleem Saab. He is our former Foreign Secretary and also President of the IRS. Jauhar Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Online, we've been joined by our correspondent and our fellow anchor person, Jawad Tehami, who is right now, in fact, in the United States, and he's covering the US elections. Thank you very much, Jawad, to have joined us as well. Let's begin with you, Jawad. Jawad, tell us a little bit about the voter sentiment just 4 days before the elections. What are people saying as far as the elections are concerned, as far as who they want to vote for, and whether they are going to vote or not?
Okay, so very interesting questions. What they are looking at, what they are wanting, who is going to be the new president of the United States of America. Of course, the 47th President of the United States of America. I'm here covering this presidential elections from last many days. I've covered some rallies. I went to the polling stations as well. Yes, the public sentiment remains divided. Of course, it is going to be a surprise on the election day on 5th of November that who is going to become the new president of the United States of America. Both the campaigns are in full swing, and we can see the jibes are being made from both the sides on the opponents. The two leading candidates, we have known that former president, Republican candidate Donald Trump, is also going full throttle, and he's also making very strong statements. We have also seen Kamala Harris, Democrat nominee candidate for the presidential elections. She's also having the rallies, the presidential campaign rallies in various states, specifically talking about the voter sentiment. As already mentioned, it remains divided, and it is going to be interesting on the election day that who is going to be the new president.
Jawad, I'll just come back to you. We have to go to our guests in the studios and then we'll come back to you, Jawad. Please stay online with us. Jauhar Saab, both Trump and Kamalaharris have campaigned recently in the western part of the US, in Arizona, in Nevada as well. Kamalaharris had performers from the music world to support her during this trip to Las Vegas, and of course both are seeking to strengthen their contacts either with the Latino voters or with all the other minority voters in the US. Trump also came with far-right media personality Tucker Carlson, who we know very well for his comments as well in Phoenix in Arizona. If you look at the campaigns of both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in the last few weeks, do you feel both have been equally successful? I wouldn't say in the tonation or in the intonation of the way they have been moving forward, but in the response that their voters have been giving them.
It's very interesting, as you mentioned, Omar, both the candidates are now and have been working on the swing states. And these Arizona and Nevada are both 2 of the 7 swing states. And these are very important because the elections would very well be decided within these battleground states or swing states, as we call them. American system is a very curious one. It's not a direct presidential election system. It's an indirect one. First, they have to they vote for the electors. And even that is a very unique system because what happens is that in every state, if one candidate gets even 10 more votes than another, or even 1 more vote than another, then he gets all the electors for that state. Now, if we talk about, like, some of the states are very big, for instance, California, you could have 40 electors. But out of the swing states, the biggest is Pennsylvania with 19 electors. And that is why it can very well happen in the US elections that you win the popular vote, as Hillary Clinton did, by 3 million. And then you can still lose the elections. Or Al Gore lost the elections, winning over 1 million more popular votes. Even in the case of Biden, he won 7 million more votes than Trump. But the election was decided within just 50,000 votes in the 7 swing states. So that is why it's so curious. Now, both these candidates have been focusing on the minority groups, you've rightly said. And why is that? Because the white vote, which is 57% in the US, now the split is very clear in the white vote. What is the split? The split is the college-educated, the young, the women. They are majorly for the Democratic Party, or for the Democrats. On the other hand, the non-college graduate, the Midwesterns, the rednecks, as you call them, and like the more conservative element, they are for the Republicans. Now, that is the divide there. So the elections get decided amongst the other racial groups. For instance, the Latinos. You mentioned Latinos. Latinos traditionally used to vote for Democrats. Like in 10 or 15 years ago, by a margin of about 30%. But that margin has shrunk to about 10% now. And Trump is trying to get it further shrunk by about 6 or 7%, because in that case, he'll win the election. Because the blacks, on the other hand, they predominantly vote for the Democrat Party. The margin there has shrunk as well. But it's still huge. It's like 70-30 amongst the blacks, or probably even more for Democrats. So because of that, they focus on these the ethnic groups. And then there are the new groups like the South Asians, and the Arab Americans in some states. For instance, Michigan, there's a substantial Arab American vote there, and that may very well decide that particular state, which is again a swing state and a very close one. So yeah, that is why you see this campaign a bit haphazard, not concentrating in the heartland of America, so to speak.
All right, more than 65 million people, Jauhar Saab, have cast their ballots in the race as of the 31st of October at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm hearing a lot of friends also who have cast their ballot before time. Any predictions from those who have, cast their votes before? I mean, a lot of people have gone to Instagram, have gone to other social media platforms and have openly said, all right, we have voted for X or we voted for Y. But what are the trends saying as far as those who have cast their ballots early?
Exactly. It's a huge chunk of votes. And yes, by the election day, probably like 80 million or more votes would be cast already. But the trends, I've seen the trends as has been depicted by the media. You see, what you find is, because they can instantly find out how many, because there the voters are registered in two groups, the Republicans or the Democrats. So out of the registered voters, you can see from state to state in which state more registered Republicans or Democrats have polled. This trend was very different in the last election, because in the last election, which Trump lost in 2020, he was the one who was pushing Republicans not to vote early, not to vote by ballot, because he thought, or at least he claimed, that that is how the fraud is committed, the so-called fraud that he's been talking about. But this time around, he's changed his position. In fact, the Republicans are really pushing upon their supporters to vote early. So what we see there in this election is, in the last elections, Democrats vastly outnumbered Republicans in early voting. But in this election, what we see is the numbers are very close. They vary a little from state to state. But the problem is this. For example, in one state, you find that 40% of the vote polled is like Republicans, and 45% is Democrats. But the rest is unregistered. So, and that may very well decide the election for that particular state. So that is why it's hard to predict. So far, there is no clear trend from early voting or the whether in person or through ballots as to which party could win.
All right. Now, Kamala Harris has also been pushing not only towards the Latinos, towards the quote-unquote black voters, but also towards the youth. I mean, she talks about a new generation of leadership when she talks to the youth or about the youth in her different rallies. Do you feel Kamala Harris represents the aspiration of the US youth?
No, this is very interesting, because youth, there are 2 or 3 groups of youth. One is the millennials. So what has been sort of found in the surveys is that the millennials are overwhelmingly for the Democrats. On the other hand, the Gen Z, those even younger, they are somehow split evenly, or perhaps sort of leaning more towards Trump, and that's a big surprise for everyone. And that is why I think, Democrats traditionally used to cast a majority of the younger vote, and these younger were generally more educated than the older groups, because the younger people, they're going more and more to colleges and universities. But that demographic has changed a bit. So I think this election, which is being touted as the closest election in the US history.
Even closer than the Al Gore one.
That's what they're saying. But personally, if you ask me, I think that this is an election, where, and I've said it in my previous commentaries as well, I think Trump is doing better than Kamala at this point in time. And it would be a big surprise if Kamala wins from here, because in this election, the momentum is with Trump. Although in the polls, like you mentioned, in 538, he's still losing the popular vote by sort of a margin of 1.5%.
A very small margin, but by a margin nevertheless. But I mean, I'd like to understand from your perspective, what makes Trump the favorite this time in the elections? Okay,
2 or 3 things. The first is that because of this indirect election, the electors system, electoral college that I've explained, you see the states where Republicans are more popular, these are smaller states in general, like primarily sort of the heartland of the US. And in the smaller states, they get a little more votes, electoral votes than their percentage of population. So this is biased against the bigger states, and that's how the founding fathers wanted that.
Okay.
And because of that, there's a bias. Like Republicans can very easily lose in terms of popular vote by a margin of 1.5%, even perhaps sometimes 2%, and still win an election. So because of that, they already stand. They start with an advantage, a big advantage. The second thing, like I said, momentum. The third thing is, I think Trump has harped upon the theme of 2 or 3 very important things. One is immigration. The second is economy. It's and the third probably healthcare and sort of Social Security. But the first 2 are extremely important for the American voters. In immigration, Americans are very concerned because during the Biden era, millions of illegals from the Mexico border, and they were not just Mexicans, they were from all over Central America and South America. They were able to infiltrate in the US. And Americans are very concerned about that. There's a feeling that the Democrats failed them, and Trump is capitalizing on them.
All right.
The second thing is on economy, and that's very interesting, because on economy, generally in American elections, whenever the economy is doing well, the incumbent party or incumbent candidate wins, always. But this time, this may be a surprise. Why? Economy is doing very well. Unemployment is at a historic low. The GDP growth rate is very good. Inflation is coming down. But the problem is that the inflation happened during this time. After the COVID, there was an inflation, surge in inflation, and then it dipped. But people don't remember that, they haven't really registered the dip yet, the middle classes. They're still, and Trump is saying, look, they brought inflation. And they didn't have inflation for the last 25 years, because inflation was something non-existent.
So he's using inflation as a good strategy to get more and more votes. Jawad, coming to you. Polls is something that a lot of media has been talking about in the US, elsewhere, and in Pakistan as well. There's also another poll that is quite indicative as far as the US media is concerned, and that is the S&P 500. They say that the S&P 500 has always been very indicative, mostly in the election since 1928, of which party is going to eventually, or which candidate is eventually going to win. I'd like to understand, what does the US public think of the different polls that the US media is putting forward or predicting? And B, do you feel that some believe in the S&P 500 poll also, of which candidate is eventually going to win these elections?
Okay, Omar, so there are a variety of views. There are a number of people who actually believe in these particular polls, but we have seen largely people say there is always a margin of error in these particular polls. This is not only S&P 500 that you've just mentioned. There are a number of other organizations and media houses and surveying houses who actually go and do such type of polls. And of course, there remains to be a margin of error always in such type of polls. So far, when we talk about these polls, specifically talking about, as Mr. Ambassador Saleem has also mentioned, this particular contest is going to go to the level of the swing states. These 7 swing states are going to be critical in electing the new president of the United States of America, including Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. Let me share an interesting understanding over here that largely is prevailing over here in the US. Many analysts believe the top of the 7 swing states, Pennsylvania, that has got the maximum electoral college votes, 19 out of 93, these 7 swing states collectively make. Whoever is going to win this particular swing state is going to make it to the presidency this time around, with many analysts saying that if former President Donald Trump wins this particular state, he is going to have 98% increased chances of becoming the president. When it comes to Kamala Harris, she would have 91% chances of getting elected as the new president of the United States of America. As far as the overall poll understanding so far is concerned on various media.
All right, we are a bit disconnected with Jawad Tehami, so we'll continue with our guest, Jawad Saleem Saab. A week before election day, Kamala Harris pledges to turn the page on fear and divisiveness at a campaign rally in Michigan. former US President Donald Trump at a rally in Atlanta hits out at critics, including former Lady Michelle Obama, who he calls nasty, and he also recently called other people by different names as well, which is of course a strategy that works for many of his voters or those who believe in him. How successful, in your point of view, have these strategies been for both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump?
Well, for Trump, it has worked. It has always worked because, he started as a dark horse in 2016 with no chances of really winning the campaign, and just calling names and and just being totally out of character in terms of the usual politics as it was practiced in the U.S. He was able to, this divisiveness, he promoted that, they against us, and he promoted this division of race, this fear and hate mongering, as per many US analysts. And it worked for him because, he became more and more popular. In this election cycle, he probably needs less of that because he's already has a stand. He has been a president. He has a lot of standing now within the US politics. And so this time he concentrated a bit on that, but also he concentrated in terms of trying to articulate the issues that he thinks are closest to the Americans. For example, I said immigration and economy and others. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, she represents the anti-Trump vote. And if she had been able to crystallize it, or if she would be able to crystallize it because the elections are still going to happen, she would win. Because I think in general, the anti-Trump vote in the US is slightly more than the Trump vote.
All right.
That is there. That is the dynamic there. But the problem is that Kamala has not been able to articulate that. For instance, she hasn't been able to disassociate herself from the Biden presidency. And she is still the vice president, of course, that's a problem. So the incumbency factor is working against her. But the other thing is she has not been able to define that how she is a different sort of individual, with a different vision and different policies than Biden. Because when people asked her, she always say, oh, I have this 80 pages in my website or something. But if you ask people, what does she stand for? It's not very clear. And she's not as charismatic as Obama, for instance, and as articulate as Obama. And that is probably hurting her. And in some of the interviews, for example, in the Fox News interview in particular, I think her weakness in that regard, her failure to articulate her arguments was quite exposed.
And was used by Trump to his advantage.
Definitely.
All right. Jawad, coming back to you, you talked about the importance of Pennsylvania that you say has the most number of electoral college votes as well. Which swing states are going to, be those states that will really play the most effective role in these upcoming elections? And this is the first part of my question. My second part of the question, Jawad, is how long before the US public and we in Pakistan will be able to know who has the lead and who has eventually won? Will it take 24 hours, 48 hours, or maybe a week or more?
Okay, so Omar, let me just go a little bit in detail regarding as to what the standing at the moment different polls are showing regarding these 7 swing states. As I've already mentioned, regarding one of the most important swing states remains to be Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, there is a very thin margin where former President Donald Trump is leading with 0.6%. And when it would come to North Carolina, there is 1.4% advantage to former President Donald Trump. When it comes to Georgia, Trump has considerably higher percentage advantage over here with 2.6%. With Arizona, likewise, somewhere around 2.4%. Nevada, 0.9%. The rest of the 2 states, Wisconsin and Michigan, where we see Kamala Harris has a certain advantage, but just of some, not exactly percentage points. It goes into decimals. When we talk about Michigan, 0.5%, and in Wisconsin, 0.2%. So it's quite a thin margin over here in these 2 swing states. But rather, when we look at Arizona and Georgia and at North Carolina, we can see a clear advantage on the side of former President Donald Trump. So it's going to be interesting that where the voters are going to trend on the election day and how they are going to treat either of these 2 candidates in all these swing states. Apparently so, it seems overall former President Donald Trump has got advantage in these swing states, but there are other polls which are also suggesting that Kamala Harris has got overall 1.4% lead against former President Donald Trump. As far as your second part of the question is concerned, it is expected by when the polling ends on November the 5th by evening or maximum at midnight, the entire world would be able to come to know that who is going to take the seat as the new president of the United States of America. And we will definitely cover that polling day, and a lot of happening is expected on that particular day. Also, the political temperature keeps on rising. As I already mentioned, the sentiment is quite divisive. We've got some deep blue states, some deep red states. So we are only expecting some phenomenal and considerable contest over here in these 7 swing states. Omar.
All right. Thank you very much, Jawad, to have joined us. And I'm sure we'll be getting hold of you many a times in the coming days, because you are our correspondent there in the US, and you are the one who will be highlighting what is happening in these US elections for us at PT World. Thank you very much, Jawad, to have joined us. Let's come to you, Jauhar Saleem Sab. Jauhar Saleem Sab, the media, as we all know, plays a very important role in shaping the narrative of the voters, those who are still undecided especially. And there are a whole lot of undecided voters, as we see in the last elections, who did not vote at all. Do you feel that the media has played an important role? And when you see a media, for example, like the Washington Post or the LA Times, that said that they are not going to publish any kind of campaign, whether it be that of Trump or whether it be Kamala Harris, does that put a dent in their campaigns as far as their perception through US media is concerned?
Well, what has changed this time is that these newspapers, they used to endorse candidates, you know, and Washington Post refused to endorse. Actually, Jeff Bezos, who owns it now,
yes,
he said that, you know, he asked them not to endorse, you know, although on that basis, many of the editorial sort of, you know, staff resigned, and there were like a lot of people who said that, you know, they threatened, you know, to stop subscribing to the newspaper. But Bezos
hasn't budged an inch as far as his point of view is concerned.
Exactly. But I think, and this was a kind of a break from the tradition, because this is a usual tradition in American politics. These big newspapers, all of them, they endorse the candidates and then ask their readers to vote for that particular candidate. Although, you know, it has limited bearing, you know, quite frankly, it doesn't really have a great deal of bearing. It's more symbolic, you know. But this time, what we see is, you see, media in the US is actually mostly leaning Democrat. You know, other than a few channels like Fox News is prominent, then there's sort of, you know, there's some hardline media sort of, which is, they have some of the journals. But the mainstream newspapers generally, they favor the Democrats. But what we have seen in the last 2-3 election cycles, social media has become very important.
Of course, yes.
Because see, the younger generation, they get their cues from there. They don't even look at the mainstream media anymore. So it's see YouTube and Instagram and sort of, you know, like
and X and X, TikTok.
Exactly, TikTok and sort of. So that has become more important when the, you know, where the younger people are concerned. And also, you know, for people who are non-college graduates, for instance, you know, they don't really go for mainstream media anyways. So that is why I think that role has diminished over time and probably does not really influence as well. And that is why what we've seen here this time around, the candidates, they have used a wide variety of means. You know, not just the mainstream media. You've seen the podcasts, for example, you know, and they have, like, some of them have literally 50, 60, 70 million subscribers. And they have gone to all types of, you know, like various media, and they have tried all types of gimmicks as well to get public
But that
attention.
is what they do through social media, because and these are the times of the elections when people get more and more attracted or attached to such podcasts that, you know, give a little bit of plus to their you know, publications or podcasts or a social media post altogether. Thank you very much, Jauhar, Saleem Saab, to have joined us. The elections are just 4 days away. I'm sure that we'll be getting hold of you many a times during the next couple of days as well. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Let's come to our second segment that concerns terrorism in Pakistan, with particular reference to what has happened in Mastung. Now, at least 7 people have been killed, 30 others injured in a blast that occurred at the civil hospital and girls' school Chowk in Mastung. The dead included police personnel, 5 children and a passerby. A police mobile van and a number of rickshaws were also damaged in this explosion. 22 people who were injured have now been shifted to Quetta. According to the police, an IED was planted to a motorbike, which was detonated by a remote control. Now, the Balochistan government has of course condemned this blast. There have been different strong statements, whether it be from the chief minister or by the spokesperson or by our prime minister or by our interior minister. Our interior minister strongly condemns the blast and expresses condolences with the families of those martyred in the incident. He also says targeting of the innocent children needs to be condemned in the strongest of possible terms, adding that those who target children should not be spared at any cost. The Interior Minister has also said that we stand with the families of the martyred and prayed for the early recovery of the injured. The fact is that the incidents such as these are a very, very sad reminder of what happened in the APS in December of 2014 that led to the formation of the National Action Plan. And when you look at outfits that target children, that target education institutions, it's a very sad state of not only the mindset of those who are behind such incidents, but also what needs to be done and how strictly things need to be managed as far as the modus operandi of the government is concerned in order to react to such heinous incidents. We've been joined by various guests to talk about this because it's a very important issue, and we have tried to get hold of as many people as possible. So in the studios we've got Meena Majeed Sahiba. Meena Majeed Sahiba is the advisor to the Chief Minister of Balochistan on Youth Affairs. Thank you very much, ma'am, to have joined us. We've also been joined by Abdullah Khan, who's the Managing Director of PICSS. Thank you very much, Abdullah Saab, to have joined us as well. Shahid Rind Saab, who is the spokesperson of the Balochistan government, also joins us online. We will we've also been joined by Brigadier retired Farooq Hameed Saab. He's a defense analyst and he is also with us on Skype. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab, to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, Meena Majeed Saaba. What is the intention, in your point of view, behind a heinous attack like this, which happens near an educational institution of all places? Is it to create terror amongst the children? Is it to target children? What is the mindset of those people who target such areas?
It's very alarming that the terrorists attacking and targeting our children. Today in Balochistan, in Mastung area, there were bomb blasts in front of a school. Many students injured, got died, and many civilians. So this is a terrorism in Balochistan. It's fully funded, and they are the agents of Pakistan enemies. They are doing such acts to spread negativity, to stop the development works in Balochistan. Such type of terrorism should be condemned the worldwide, and I argue the people of Pakistan that should come forward and condemn such acts in Balochistan, and also give this message to people of Balochistan that enough is enough. Now we all should stand together against this terrorism.
As an advisor on youth affairs, ma'am, how important is for any government, whether it be the Balochistan government or whether it be any other government in Pakistan or abroad, to ensure that the children remain safe?
People of Balochistan, the government of Balochistan doing its hard best to protect our children, to keep peace in the province, to maintain law and order situation. But as you know, that there are so many things happening in Balochistan. There are so many organizations who are funding, and they want to promote this terrorism in Balochistan. So it's quite hard, and it's challenge for government of Balochistan. But we are trying our hard, and we are doing our best to overcome this terrorism, and our security agencies are also doing their best. So at the end, I want to say that the federal government also should focus and seriously do some steps for Balochistan. All alone we couldn't overcome this terrorism. We need support from federal too.
All right, Abdullah Saab, when it comes to statistics, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan have been to two areas that have been affected the most by terrorist incidents in the last few years. What does your organization say or predict as far as the number of such incidents is concerned? Have they increased, have they decreased over the last few months?
Especially if we talk about Mastung remain hit by such kind of attacks where civilian losses were highest. We have seen that 150 plus people were killed when a suicide bombing happened in 2018. Last year on 12th Rabiul, more than 50 people were killed in Mastung. So Mastung used to be a hub of Daesh and related groups, and they used to carry out attacks, although this specific attack is so far not clear who is behind this attack. As far as overall stats are concerned, terrorist attacks gone down slightly in September and October, but in October we have just concluded our calculations for the month of October. We have seen a rise in the deaths. So deaths gone up, but militant attacks gone down 12%. So one side a little bit improvement, but on the other side the deaths increased. But interestingly, this was security forces were very much active in this October, because security forces eliminated at least 98 suspected terrorists across the country, and this is the highest number done by the security forces at any single month in this year. So this can tell us the magnitude of the activeness of the security forces, as Meena has highlighted that our security forces are doing their best. On the other hand, the security forces also during this process more than around 62 personnel got martyred, and during this month this is also the highest number in any single month of 2024. So this shows the intensity of the conflict, or the intensity of our security forces action, also the onslaught by the militants.
All right. Brigadier Saab, coming to you, when it comes to these terrorist outfits, and there are quite a number of prominent terrorist outfits that have been behind such incidents in Balochistan as well as in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, I'd like to understand, A, what is the methodology, what is the mind game or the end game of such militant outfits, and my second part of the question is, what in your point of view should now be the kinetic and non-kinetic resolve of the government and our forces?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for inviting me to your program. Obviously, it is highly condemnable, the upsurge that we have seen in terrorist attacks in KP and obviously Balochistan also. There is one factor which is different as far as the terrorists are concerned, that they're targeting innocent civilians, unarmed civilians in a big way, and especially civilians who like coal mine workers, like laborers, and laborers, workers from other provinces who are there in Balochistan and working on different projects. Whereas in KP, we find that the emphasis is more on targeting the police, the security forces. Obviously, on the attacks on the security forces also there in Balochistan. You see, the point to understand is that the aim of these terrorist attacks, let's talk about Balochistan only, is to destabilize the province, is to retard the activities, the economic activities, the development activities in Balochistan, and at a strategic level, since these terror groups are proxies of international forces which want that Balochistan and hence Pakistan should remain destabilized, they want to sabotage the progress of CPEC. And that is one reason why we see in other parts of Pakistan attacks on the Chinese workers and even Jawad and some parts of Balochistan also. So the point is that while the security forces are doing their best with the support of the provincial government in case of intelligence-based operation against the terrorists, obviously, and there are whenever the terrorists strike, then the security forces and the intelligence agencies, they also react, and we have in the ensuing fight, obviously a lot of terrorists are killed, so many are captured, and of course with their weapons. Now the point is that we need to have a wholesome strategy. It is not just a military strategy that is going to work. We need a political strategy also.
Sir, I'll come back to that strategy. We've been joined by Shahid Rind, who's the spokesperson of the Balochistan government. Shahid Rind, thank you very much to have joined us. I'd like to quote what you said after this heinous incident happened in Mastung. You said that all the officials of the district administration, bomb disposal squad, security forces have reached the spot. He said emergency has been declared in hospitals and all doctors and paramedical staff have been called to provide medical care to the injured. And you said that the police have initiated an inquiry as far as this incident is concerned. Is there any update as far as all of this is concerned? What happened in Mastung? All right, let's come back to Meena. Meena, youth are the harbingers of your society, and of course you represent, as far as your province is concerned, the youth, and you are the advisor on of the Chief Minister as far as the youth is concerned. What measures will now be taken by the Balochistan government to secure the youth that is studying in different schools and colleges? Do you feel certain measures are going to be taken in the wake of this Mastung attack?
As far as I'm concerned about the youth Balochistan, obviously there is a link, terrorism and the youth Balochistan, the deprivation of Balochistan. They want to exploit our youth in the name of the deprivation of Balochistan. They want to utilize our youth. As we have seen in many terrorist attacks, our young youth were utilized. So they are manipulating them on the name of the deprivation of Balochistan. So the government of Balochistan have a clear and a very serious focus on youth Balochistan. As I am the advisor of youth and CM Balochistan, Mir Sarfaraz Bugti Saab, we have took many initiatives for the youth Balochistan, and trying to implement those initiatives. They are on pipeline and many were implemented. as we are sending 30,000 youth of Balochistan, we give them training and then we will send
I think to give the necessary importance or due regard or importance to the youth of any province or any nation is extremely important, and Balochistan is not lagging behind at all and doing the necessary steps as far as that is concerned. Shahid Rind joins us again. He's a spokesperson of the Balochistan government. Shahid Rind, thank you very much to have joined us. Shahid Rind, you said a police inquiry had begun as far as this incident in Mastung is concerned. What's the update on that? What are what have you found out as far as who's behind it? What kind of methodology was used?
As we see today's attack in Mastung, there are a few things on which security forces and law enforcement agencies or investigators are working. We see in the past in Mastung there were many attacks on educational institutions, especially on girls' education in the past years. Today there was a target near Girls High School, and also a police van was there. So this is not yet clear. Either terrorists want to attack a school or either they want to attack a security forces. This is not clear yet, but security forces and investigators are working on this line.
All right, Shahid, thank you very much to have joined us and have given us an update as far as this heinous incident in Mastung is concerned. I'd like to go to Brigadier Farooq Hameed Saab if he's still with us. Brigadier Saab, you were talking to us about the actions that need to be taken, kinetic and non-kinetic. Could you kindly highlight some of those?
The weapons which are being used by the militant groups, obviously they're getting those from across the border from Afghanistan, and obviously they have their local facilitator. I do not rule out the possibility. In fact, this is known also to some extent that the Afghan government they're also facilitating the movement of terrorists from Afghanistan across the border into Balochistan, and these are those weapons that the Americans left in Afghanistan. Weapons worth billions of dollars that they're now commonly found and being used by the terrorist group. Now the important point is, yes, this is a good point that has been raised, that they're targeting the youth of Balochistan, giving them better education, better opportunities in life, and we see them that they're being inducted into the mainstream to remove the sense of deprivation. But I have a feeling that they should be more, the guiding principle should now be winning the hearts and minds of the people of Balochistan, the youth especially. Lot more needs to be done. For example, the economic development projects, if they should be hastened up, and Baloch youth should be employed in much greater number so that they feel that they are part of the development activity. Similarly, I'm very happy to report that thousands and thousands of our Baloch youth have now, in the last few years, they joined the armed forces, and they are also, some of them, 2,000 or 3,000, they joined the Pakistan Military Academy. They're now commissioned officers, and many have sacrificed their life in the war on terror for the country. So the Baloch youth, I think, should be the target, because they are being misguided, they're being misled by these terrorist groups, and if we can turn them around, which of course the effort is going on through all those cadet colleges, those vocational centers, more colleges, universities. I think
that this is a non-kinetic measure that needs to be taken as far as the youth of Balochistan is concerned. Thank you very much, Brigadier Retired Farooq Hameed Saab, Defence Analyst, to have joined us and to have given us your minute point of view as far as this hideous incident is concerned. Abdullah, when it comes to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, and when you look at we had a press conference by the DGISP a couple of weeks back, in which he also highlighted the number of IBOs that the armed forces are conducting every single day and how effective they have been. And we see such incidents happening. We see certain elements that continue to thrive on terrorism. When you look at statistics, when you look at the methodologies, when you look at the the way such terrorist outfits function, what is the best strategy to neutralize them?
First, I would just briefly talk about the Baloch youth.
Okay.
Baloch youth I study the militant narratives, their ideology. The main issue is not the deprivation. They actually mobilize and motivate youth in the name of an independent homeland. So this is what they call, and they are against all the development work in Balochistan. What the Chinese are doing there, that is uplifting Balochistan, but the BLA and BLF, all they are attacking them. They say do not do any projects because this is our land, you cannot do it. So this is what basically the Balochistan government has to do, is to fight on the ideological front first, and then that deprivation and all these things, they have the point, but the main point is our focus is lacking about the ideological issue. Why that this narrative is not being countered, that the Balochistan is an integral part of Pakistan and there is no need to have a homeland, and that is the point. Other than that, you know, this is the IBOs or specific operations will not sort out the issue overall, because this is basically linked to a strategic issue. Your strategic approach has to be that we have to end this once for all, and that we have seen that the operations alone, whether kinetic, IBOs or whatever, could not resolve it for the long term. So we have to think out of the box. Whether there is a political approach is required or not, which was adopted some years back, can we once again go for that or not? So I personally believe that we can resolve specifically the KP and Maj districts issue is through some political engagements. We can mobilize our friends in Gulf and China and Russia as well to exert their leverages over the Afghan government, that they should actually address our concern, because this could not be possible if Afghan government actually listens to our request, it listens to its international commitments. Everything is coming from Afghanistan. If that space is not shrunk for these militants, IBOs alone will not be sufficient to address this issue. So I think we have to go something out of the box.
All right. We've also been joined by Zahoor Ahmed Buledi, who is the Planning Minister of Balochistan. Thank you very much, Mr. Buledi, to have joined us. Mr. Buledi, a very sad incident that happened in Mastung today, and of course targeting children and happening near an educational institution. What now are the steps that the Balochistan government is going to take to not only thwart such terrorist elements, but to reduce such incidents from happening?
First of all, it is very heart-wrenching and condemnable terrorist attack where our many children and many civilian individuals have lost their life and many were critically injured, which is highly condemnable. Government is definitely taking appropriate measures, but you know our situation, especially law and order, is not good, and we are facing many challenges regarding law and order. So we are trying our best, and our law enforcement agencies are giving sacrifices, and they are dealing with these terrorists. And but you know, they are being sponsored and they are being supported by hostile agencies, and they are using as a mercenaries who are fighting with the government and the people. And
thank you very much, Zahoor Ahmed Buledi sahab, to have joined us, Balochistan's Planning Minister, giving us, of course, his point of view on this recent tragedy in Mastung. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us, and thank you very much, Meena, Majeed, Advisor to the Chief Minister of Balochistan on Youth Affairs, and thank you very much, Abdullah Khan, Managing Director of PICSS, to have joined us as well, to have given us your eminent point of views on this heinous tragedy in Mastung. Let's come to our last two stories very, very quickly. The first concerns the Independence Day of Gilgit-Baltistan that was observed all across Pakistan today, and of course this tribute was also paid to the martyrs and ghazis of the liberation struggle of Gilgit-Baltistan. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, today is also the anniversary of the massacre of Sikhs in 1984, and that happened in India. and we all know what happened. And on the 31st of October in 1984, when Sikhs were massacred in India, and then during this time thousands of Sikhs were killed while hundreds of women were also raped. Extremist Hindus selectively killed Sikhs during the voting lists. That's it for the moment. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah on Monday with news stories segments pertaining to us, you and Pakistan. Have a wonderful weekend. Allah Hafiz.